Have you ever thought about how close we came in January 2001 to a President Denny Hastert? Or even more scary, President Strom Thurmond? It's true, those were the majority leaders in Congress at the time, and either of them could have temporarily become president had the famous Bush v. Gore vote recount continued past Inauguration Day. Of course, the Supreme Court ended all that in December 2000, but right up until then, the Bush team, opposing the recount every step of the way, gave every indication that they were prepared to keep fighting on and on and on and on indefinitely, which means the Presidential Succession Act would have kicked in, making then House Speaker Hastert the acting president. Control of the presidency was at stake then, and the Republican Party showed they had no qualms about turning a legal argument into a political Donnybrook. Right now, today, control of the Senate and, by extension, control of President Obama's agenda is at stake. And once again, Republicans are playing to win at all costs. In this case, it means blocking Al Franken from taking his place as Minnesota's junior senator, even though a statewide recount showed Franken got 225 more votes than Norm Coleman, which you might think would mean that Al Franken won the election because he got more votes than Norm Coleman. Ooh, so complicated. Republicans have failed to find a way, anyway, to stop the election from being certified. And according to Politico.com, quote, Republican Senator John Cornyn is threatening World War III if Democrats try to seat Al Franken in the Senate before Norm Coleman can pursue his case through the federal courts, even if the state Supreme Court rules in Mr. Franken's favor. Cornyn said that, quote, a federal challenge to November's elections could reportedly take years to resolve. In other words, Republicans are in battle mode, like 2000 all over again. I have seen this movie before, and I still get all squeezy thinking about how it ended. Joining us now is David Boies, who's the attorney who represented then Vice President Al Gore in that 2000 recount. Mr. Boies, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
What is your analysis of the Franken-Coleman battle? Do you think that there's any doubt as to the outcome here?
I don't think there's any doubt. I think Senator Franken has won this election. He's won a statewide recount. It's a little ironic that the Republicans who fought so hard to prevent a statewide recount, successfully to prevent a statewide recount in Florida in the 2000 election, have now had their statewide recount, lost it, and they're now asking for still another recount.
It makes me think that this isn't very much about legal principle or constitutional principle. It's just about taking advantage wherever you can find it. And in this case, like in 2000, they think that advantage is to be found by stretching it out as much as possible. Is that just the understood name of the game here?
Well, I think it is, unfortunately. And I think that when you have politicians who, on the one hand, preach state rights, and then when they don't like a state result, preach, let's go to federal court and try to drag it out. I think that's what causes some of the cynicism people have about politics in general in this country.
I think that the Republicans have not, I guess, paid a very heavy political price thus far for their strategy around the Coleman-Franken recount. People aren't up in arms saying, what do these Republicans do trying to drag this out? Is that just because we're sort of giving the process a benefit of the doubt here? Or is this seem too complicated for people to understand the political strategy that's at work here?
Well, I think it is partly that people are giving the political process a chance to work itself out. I think that if the Republicans continue this fight, after having lost a third and fourth time in the state courts in Minnesota, then I think you will see people beginning to be upset about it. I also think that with everything else that's going on in the world, both domestically with the financial crisis and abroad, that people's attention are not necessarily focused on a single Senate race. I think that this is an important race. I think people will begin to focus on it. But I think it's natural that with the process still going on and with all the other things to grab people's attention, it hasn't gotten as much attention as it might otherwise.
When you look back at 2000, not only how it ended, but how it proceeded through that entire fight, how important do you think the extra legal factors were? The factors like media relations, the factors like political strategy, the things that happened outside the courtroom. How much of an effect do you think that they had on the ultimate outcome? And who do you think is doing a better job at that right now in Coleman v. Franken?
Well, I think that in the 2000 election, ultimately, none of those things mattered. To the extent that they were going to have an effect, it was going to have an effect in Florida. But remember, we won in Florida. The Florida Supreme Court had issued an order directing a statewide recount. That recount was already underway, and every indication in that recount was that Vice President Gore was going to be the winner of the popular vote in Florida the way he'd won the popular vote nationally. That got stopped in the United States Supreme Court by a 5-4 vote. And I don't think anything that was happening outside of the courtroom really affected those 5 justices. I think they had their minds made up for a particular purpose, and I don't think the media strategy really was a critical factor there.
One other aspect of this here is financing, and I wonder to what degree you think this could be a battle of financial resources in terms of being willing to stretch this out. Could this be a battle of financial attrition?
Well, I think to some extent part of what has been going on is an attempt by the Republicans to use the financial strength to draw things out. Fortunately, I think people have, even though people said media attention may not have been on this race, I think a lot of people's attention have been on this race sufficiently so that the Franken camp is being financed in a way that permits them to battle on in the courts to the extent they have to.
David Boies, one last question for you. I've always wanted to ask you this. Do you lay at night gritting your teeth about Bush v. Gore?
Every night. Fewer nights after January 20th of this year, but a lot of nights before then.
Yeah. Attorney David Boies, thank you for coming on the show tonight. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.